What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and today we are going to be doing a little off-the-cuff discussion of the war stories in Battlefield 1. Now, I'm not going to be spoiling anything. There are not going to be any spoilers within this video. I'm not even going to be talking about what the war stories contain. Instead, I'm going to be talking about why I feel like this kind of small little excerpt of a larger story is where most campaigns need to be in the gaming industry going forward, and why I kind of believe that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright, so if you aren't aware, pretty much war stories are a new kind of campaign that is being introduced in Battlefield 1, and just like any regular campaign, you can run through them just as fast as you would like. There are pretty much 6 of them, and I found that if I'm just playing the objective and just going from point A to point B, not looking for any collectibles, not trying to look at the map in general, just kind of playing the game, I can probably finish one in about maybe an hour, hour and a half, give or take, if I'm just playing it casually, which I feel is a pretty good amount of time to spend during one session if you just want to get a little taste of the campaign in between multiplayer matches. So now with this hour and a half, you're presented with a new character, a new cast of characters to support that main character, and then an entire story and a little part of their lives that may or may not have some flashbacks, may or may not have different time periods in the story that it's taking place, particularly the second one, the second chronological one, where you're pretty much a pilot, you talk to another pilot, and then later on you are on the battlefield, which is kind of interesting like that. And so that's the kind of thing you're going to be getting from a war story, because it's not necessarily an excerpt of a larger thing, but more so it's a small short narrative that can totally exist on its own or in a larger story as a whole, which is very, very integral whenever you're talking about keeping the person engaged, because you have an entire story being presented in just about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, that has a complete beginning, middle, and end, although it's not the complete beginning, middle, and end we are used to seeing in the gaming industry when it comes to these narratives. It still is a beginning, middle, and end, and it doesn't take up your entire life as you're playing through the campaign. You can literally sit down and with one really small session as compared to some of the time that I've spent with Battlefield 1, you can actually have an entire life presented to you that took place in World War I. Now, another thing that I like about these is that there's less time for character development required, because in Battlefield 4 even, although the first mission did kind of just throw you into the action, with other FPS games, it seems like there's at least one mission where you're pretty much establishing a background. You're finding out where the person went, you're finding out where they came from, how they got into the squad, you're finding out details about all of the other squad members. It's just kind of trying to establish that emotional support, and Battlefield 1 still does that. There is still emotional connection, but it's established through these small cutscenes that probably last between 1 and 2 minutes that just kind of give you an overview of what's going on. It presents the characters to you in a way that really does impact you emotionally, but it doesn't just draw it out like some other first-person shooter games have done in the past. It presents the characters to you, it shows you why you should care about them, and then it drives you right into the action with these characters that you now successfully do genuinely care about. Now, like I just said, with the war stories, you get thrown straight into the action. There is no kind of meandering around. Now, there are different kinds of throwing into the action. You can be going across the French countryside. You can be flying in the air, waiting to sight someone. You can be in these kind of stealth modes. Though overall, within, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes of getting into a war story, if you are not already into the action, you are going to be getting into the action soon. And that's something that really does kind of cater to our mindsets in modern times, because we are so inclined to focus on the action, we are so inclined to go straight into the heat of the moment, that if you don't present us that, we very well might get bored and go play multiplayer instead of spending time in the campaign, which I know a lot of people have already done. A lot of people have skipped straight to the multiplayer aspect of Battlefield 1, and for good reason. It is absolutely mind-blowing how great Battlefield 1 is, in my opinion, but instead of doing that, War Stories does present that same kind of fast-paced, get-into-the-action kind of thing that you would expect from Battlefield, though it does put a genuinely awesome narrative in behind that, as well as presents you with a pretty beautiful-looking story overall. Now, I do think that War Stories and the anecdotal kind of storytelling method that's being presented here is one of the best ones in the gaming industry. Though that being said, it's not one that caters to every single game that's out there, and it's not one that I think should be applied to every single game that's out there. Like, if you had a platformer that just needs a little bit of background information, you don't need to give us a war story for each of the individual characters, because overall, the characters in a platformer, unless it's a special kind of platformer, are generally don't have a purpose. There's no reason for them to have a backstory in general. It's all about the gameplay with the platformer. The one example I've seen being thrown around online is Red Dead Redemption 2, and that is a game that would definitely benefit from the same kind of storytelling that is presented in Battlefield 1. Now, like I said, I'm a huge fan of war stories in Battlefield 1 and the idea of this kind of anecdotal storytelling method in general, because I feel like it could definitely bring a lot more life into the gaming industry from a narrative perspective. Now, that being said, I don't think it should be used with every single game that's out there. If you have a platformer that needs a little bit of background information, you don't need to give us an entire war stories background with a whole bunch of little smaller stories to give us the larger scheme of things. It's all about the gameplay with the platformer. You don't need that kind of thing. Though within a game, and this is the best example I've seen on the internet so far, like Red Dead Redemption 2, this kind of method could definitely come in handy, because in the reveal trailer, we're presented with 7 men on horseback, whether they be bandits or heroes. Now, if you employ this kind of anecdotal storytelling method, you can literally go back and tell the beginning of how each of these individuals got into this little troop, perhaps how they are all going to redeem themselves if you want to go a redemption style route. And once you've told each of these 7 stories, you can then bring them all together at the end whenever they attack the Alamo, or whether they attack San Antonio or the Dallas Cowboys football state. I don't know what's going to be happening in Red Dead Redemption 2. We'll know in fall 2017, but if you told each of these individual stories instead of just throwing them all at once, I feel like that would make it a much more engaging and much more interesting and much more memorable experience for the player. So will this kind of storytelling become something we see more and more in the gaming industry? I would say I wouldn't be surprised if it actually did, because of the success of Battlefield 1. Early reports at the time of making this video are saying that it's already doubled the sales of Battlefield 4 and Battlefield Hardline within the first week. Now, Battlefield Hardline, not surprised. Battlefield 4, that's something to gawk at, though that has not been confirmed. Regardless, sales of Battlefield 1 are absolutely incredible so far, and so a lot of people are playing this game, and if they do enjoy the campaign, then developers are definitely going to take note of that. So keep your eye to the ground, see if you see any more of these kind of things coming, because like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of more of these experiences over the course of the next couple of years. So there you guys have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, drop me a like and share on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, MySpace, social media, wherever you might spend the majority of your time socializing with virtual people. If you happen to be new to the channel, please head over there and check out some of my other content, because I do upload new stuff like 3 or 4 days a week, depending on the week. So there's always something new right here on the channel when you drop by to watch some videos. But as for right now, I'm going to go continue digging into these war stories. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.